In the charred pages of forbidden grimoires, one name is etched in flames. Destruction. I see it, that glimmer in your eyes. You've come seeking power, not just to defeat your enemies, but to reduce them to ash. So let me show you how to burn the world down and laugh while it screams, fill the pools with blood. From the gnomes, of course. I mean, they barely fight back, but they squeal beautifully. Welcome back to the Cryptic Cove. Let us begin.
Following that fantastic RP intro, we are going to go straight into the video. Notice at the bottom that there will be timestamps so you can jump to any section of the video according to what you need to see. Starting off, we're going to go right into stats. Your stat priority is going to be haste, verse, mastery, then crit. Do know that for PvP gear, meaning conquest or honor gear, you should never be taking critical strike. It's always haste versus mastery. If you're trying to be as competitive as possible, the two best races are going to be Night Elf and Void Elf, for the reasons seen on your screen, Shadow Meld and Spatial Rift. However, if you want to be like me, you're obviously going to play the coolest race in the game, which is Undead. On screen now is going to be your general talent loadout. In these talents, there are some flexibility, especially on the Warlock side, and some people prefer to play Diabolist instead of Hellcaller. In my personal opinion, I think Hellcaller is the auto pick. While Diabolist can create some massive Chaos Bolts, it's just really hard to get them to land when you really want them to land, and most teams know when that's coming, so they work really hard to shut down those bolts or let it happen at a time that is a little less intense for the enemy team to deal with. Hellcaller will provide a lot more throughput, especially when you're getting trained by those melee teams or BM hunters that are shutting down so many of your casts. That being said, I do want to talk about PvP talents, as there is a bunch of talents you can take, and they all honestly are pretty good. It just depends on the team you're playing against. Impish Instincts is always a lock if you have melee of any kind hitting you, as reducing that port cooldown is massive. The other thing you can play if you're going into a heavy melee cleave is your Gateway Mastery, reducing the cooldown on your gate for you and your teammates. If you're playing against a caster cleave, or if there's just a lot of spell-based CC, whether that's a Ret trying to throw Hammer of Justice, or Sheeps, etc., Nether Ward gains some uptime. It isn't as good as you're usually to go, unless there is some big damage coming out from a caster cleave, and then it does have a lot more use. Fell Fissure is another great talent. It is a Mortal Strike. It is something that also reduces movement. When you drop Havoc, you will create fissures in multiple locations, and is fantastic for getting not only a little bit of a soft CC, meaning that speed reduce, but more so for the Mortal Strike coming out. I find that to be fantastic. Against big melee cleaves, you can also consider Soul Rip, reducing that damage that you are taking, which is really, really big. They also get a Mortal Strike on them from it as well. So if you have two melees on top of you, you can go ahead and drop that. Other than that, the only other talent that I really, really want to talk about as being good is Shadow Rift. If you stay to the tips and tricks section, there is some sneaky things that you can do with Shadow Rift that I personally really have enjoyed, and I find that did get me some wins, especially in solo shuffle. But in general, your auto picks are always going to be Impish Instincts, and then the other two flexed depending on what you're playing against. Now for the rotation, in general, you are going to want to make sure that you have Wither up on a target at all times. Your pet isn't always on your primary target, because if the healer is really, really far over there, let's say, I may need my pet to be on that healer, so that way I can make sure that I hit the kick. So a lot of times I will send my pet onto the healer or targets that I am attempting to cleanse or dispel, I guess, through Devour Magic. So make sure that your pet is on the appropriate target as to what you're trying to accomplish. Once Wither is up, in general, if I am getting cleaved down and it's a melee cleave that's coming on me and I'm going to take a ton of damage, I want to make sure that I put one Conflagrate and one Shadow Burn into the target, as I am trying to do two things. One, I want Eradication onto the target so that way they take increased damage from me. 2, I want these cooldowns to start rotating so that way I have a little bit of damage coming out, I get eradication up, and I'm putting at least some damage into the target. What a lot of people fail to do when they get trained is they will try to just start casting Chaos Bolts and they are getting kicked non-stop into oblivion. Don't do that. We're going to do a couple things. One, we're going to put that Conflagrate. We're going to put that Shadow Burn into the target. And if there's 2 melee on top of me, I'm going to be throwing Rain of Fire if I can't cast anything, so I can at least get some damage going. And I am going to be incinerating. A lot of people stop with the incineration for some weird reason, and they just don't feel like either A, it's dealing any damage, but they forget that we're needing a lot of shard generation in order to continue to put Shadow Burns into the target, but we want those big bolts out, and with bolts comes Soul Shard usage. So make sure that you have your Wither up, your Conflagrate, your Shadow Burn, you are dropping your Rain if you need to. When it's time to go big, yes, you're going to want your Infernal. We're going to talk really quickly if you're just doing a smaller go or Infernal's on cooldown. You're going to, in this case, I go Conflagrate, I go Shadow Burn in order to get Eradication, and then I'm going Chaos Bolt into Conflagrate, trying to generate another Soul Shard, my second one, through Incinerate back into that Chaos Bolt. So your whole goal is to maintain Eradication as much of the time as you can, which you can insta-proc with Shadow Burn. You're using your Conflagrate to get a reduced casting time of your Chaos Bolt, and you're maintaining your Wither on your target at all times. Wither, while it does very little damage, does create Soul Shard generation, so we want to make sure that that's on the target at all times. Now, if you're going into your big and scary, I am going to nuke the world time, let me just get back up to shards really quick on max. So I have my Wither on the target. What I'm going to do is I don't have a second target here, but normally I would Havoc onto a secondary target. I am going to Malevolence once I have Wither on the targets that I'm trying to hurt. I'm going to Havoc up. I am going to Shadow Burn my primary target, Conflagrate, drop my pet when I'm timed to get a stun for 1 free Chaos Bolt. I'm going to Conflagrate again, Chaos Bolt, into Conflagrate, Chaos Bolt. Notice that my pet did come out during this time. That is due to Soul Shard usage, so you want to try and time it if you can to where this comes out, as you are just going to be pumping shards. And anytime you're coming close to those 2 shards, you're throwing your Chaos Bolts back out. Make sure that you are putting Havoc up before this part of your rotation, and that you are trying to do your best to prevent getting kicked during this big go. See the tips and tricks section where I have a ton of advice on how to get more Chaos Bolts out and things that will help you in your damage dealing overall. Hopefully the video has helped you so far. Consider subscribing. We are a really small channel and every little bit helps. It's completely free. Feel free to drop love in the comments or questions you may have, give a thumbs up to the video, and share it to your fellow Warlocks. Now on to the tips and tricks. Now the first part of the tips and tricks section that I want to talk about is getting out those Chaos Bolts, as everybody who plays Destruction knows that as soon as Chaos Bolt comes out, everybody runs in fear and wants to stop the bolt. So what do we do in order to try and get more Chaos Bolt casts freely? Well, the first thing is that yes, we are going to juke. So when you juke, you don't want to instantly cancel, as unless they are scripting, nobody is that fast in order to hit that juke. So you want to cast for a little bit of time, stop. Now one of the biggest things you gotta do is don't instantly start casting, because between server delay time and human reaction, what inevitably will happen is you start the cast, stop, go to cast again, and then their reaction makes them actually kick the real cast. So when you go to juke, start that cast, stop it, wait for a second, then go into the cast. If you have the gem, the PvP gem, to be able to create the premeditation buff, yes, that is the optimal way. But if you're maybe early in your gearing, maybe you don't have that yet, that's totally fine. You're still going to be able to burn that kick. And if you get rid of one, you are in a much better position. The second thing you want to do is you want to try to bait out kicks using other spells and abilities. So Fear is one of my favorite ones because they are worried about getting a CC setup going on to them or stopping their damage. So a lot of times, especially in lower MMR, you can get a Fear to get kicked, or if your team does have good pressure, they're worried about their healer getting feared, so they might just kick you on Fear. If they kick you on Fear, you are still free to cast Chaos Bolt. It is not part of the Shadow School. The second thing is if they kick Fear, but you know that, say you're in a game where there's 2 melee on top of you and they have just been going for broke, trying to kill you the whole game. Say they kick Fear, don't instantly cast Chaos Bolt right after, because a lot of times that secondary DPS still has their kick available, or maybe the healer's in range. So what I like to do is if I get kicked on Fear, I will go into 1 Incinerate and see if they kick Incinerate. If they do, now I'm very free to go into that Chaos Bolt and get that big, delicious Chaos Bolt to the face kind of damage that we want to see. The second thing I want to talk to you about is Seduce. You'll notice my pet is sometimes worth it to take into arena. I know that with Felpup, yes, we're gonna get the kicks. We're also going to be able to get some buffs removed. He is going to take that cleanse onto the enemy team. But there's a few things I want to just show you. One is I do hotkey not only my attack, my follow, and my direction with my pet, but during an opener, a lot of times I will separate my pet from me just slightly against things like into Rogue Mage, where we need to stop the opener if I'm playing 2s, or RMP, very setup-y comps, or things where I'm going to take a lot of melee cleave. Sometimes I'll play into this. That opener comes up, boom, my healer gets into sap, Rogue opens me, and say he's already getting ready to go into a dance, or Blades is up, I will go ahead and separate slightly just to stop any roots or AoEs off the mage if they're opening in a coordinated stance, and have like a lucky proc off of one of their spells, rooting the pet, stopping the Seduce. So I'll off slightly, and then boom, I create the Seduce. The other reason I play off when I do that with my pet is because I can track that the Seduce is going to go where I want it to. So let's say I'm over here and I want the Seduce not to be to my right, but I want it to my left. Well, instead of my pet being on top of me and not giving me a lot of distance, I can separate my pet. Rogue opens, boom, I hit the Seduce. The Rogue is going that way. Let's say this is a pillar. I can quickly pillar that Rogue off of that first cheap shot while that Rogue is still in Seduce, and I can start working into the Mage. So maybe I go into the Mage, I try and get that Fear off into the Mage, and let's say I get kicked, I can go into those Chaos, or maybe I don't get kicked. Rogue comes back in, I can hit that Rogue with a coil. Now I'm switching into that Curse of Exhaustion. I'm stopping that line of sight so he can't get right back up on top of me via Shadow Step. So pet, Seduce, good stuff. The next thing I wanted to talk about was, let me set this up here. So let's say I have a port, let's say this is a pillar, and I have melee all up on top of me, and I need them off. One thing I can do is I can use Shadow Rift. Shadow Rift is going to teleport anything that is caught inside that rift to wherever my port is. So not only can I transport, say, melee DPS or even casters, I suppose, into that, but I can also do the same for a healer. So say there's a healer that, especially like Holy Paladins, and they're playing a little aggressively, they're trying to be mana efficient, they're having to get out there, I might be able to create some pressure onto the enemy DPS. I can then go ahead and Shadow Rift that healer out of line of sight of their team. Knowing that, I might do something sneaky. My pet's probably going to be on the healer during that time, but maybe I'm going to do something a little wild. Maybe we combine the second tip I just gave you with this one. Maybe ahead of time, I'm going to send my pet on over there. I'm going to Shadow Rift so I get something sent over there, and then I Seduce while they're over there, creating a CC chain between my pet and Rift while I am just laying down the hammer, maybe going into some Chaos Bolts, or I'm dropping Infernal into Shadow Fury for some big damage. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is Nether Ward. Nether Ward is a fantastic ability. It reflects spells. One thing that is important to know is, say you're going against, a ret, and you have, say there's a couple melee on their team, that ret's going to come in. let's see a CC goes down on your healer and the ret is charging at you and he has Hodge available, it is very common for them to want to stun the primary kill target. So I might predict and go ahead and pop Nether Ward and boom, reflect the Hodge onto him, reverse that uptime. Maybe he trinkets. Now I get to coil into fear or seduce, etc. I have a billion options now. Now we're working the enemy team and we turn their pressure against them. This is really, really good. Also, do know that it can be used, of course, for things like sheep, fear, any hard cast spells. And in addition to that, it is huge, obviously, if you're going into a caster cleave when they get big, ugly, and scary, like maybe you hear the Ellie screaming bloody murder and he is getting ready to annihilate you, you can reflect for a solid 3 seconds and either turn the tide or at least slow the damage. The next thing I wanted to talk about is Unending Resolve, and this is risky, but it is something that should be mentioned. A lot of locks don't know that an Unending Resolve grants immunity to interrupt or silence and pushback. So if I have a big go, Infernal comes out, or maybe you're playing Diabolus instead of Hellcaller and you really need this to land. This is big damage time. You're guaranteed that you're going to get the kill if you get some bolts off. You know, you can Havoc, go ahead, throw this up, boom, I'm hitting my Unending Resolve, and now I'm pumping Chaos Bolts, and I cannot be kicked at least for a couple bolts. I usually get almost 3 bolts into the enemy team, but you can at least get a couple free bolts in no matter what you do. That is huge. And the very, very last tip is actually for very new Warlocks. If you're going into an arena match and your gates are going to open, one, you can always drop your circle or your port at the beginning, so you at least have one. And then what you can do is, of course, whenever you get where you're going and you want to go ahead and drop that port, make sure if that enemy team is rushing you, you can just soul burn. If you're going to soul burn that gate, boom, my soul burn, bam, my gate's down. I can't actually use it here apparently, but I can soul burn a gate so that way I don't have to worry about that cast. And so everything is safe. So boom, I can, wow, apparently you can't use them in major cities at all. Interesting. But you can go ahead, you can soul burn that gate. Make sure that you don't have to worry about getting interrupted on that cast, so you're not stuck with a huge amount of downtime. This is really, really important. I find, especially like if a warrior's playing a little sheepish, there we go. We can burn that gate. I can mount, and then I have my port, you know, say I have my port somewhere near my gate, and now I can run and pillar, and I give myself and my team time to prepare, and then I can play into my port and gate combo, and that helps. So at the beginning of your arena matches, make sure that you are not afraid to go ahead and burn that gate as necessary. I do have a ton more tips and pieces of advice, but for sake of length of video, I want to keep this as short as possible. If you guys want more tips and tricks, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be happy to continue the series and do even more to help show you some unique ideas. Thank you so much for watching the video. Once again, if this video has helped, please consider subscribing. It does help. Every little bit helps. We are a baby channel, and I put a lot of time, energy, and effort to trying to make these videos as good and clean as possible. Thank you so much for watching. I was the host, the captain himself, Gabe D.